Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we are talking about one of the most historically significant ships in the game, and that is the Tier 3 British battleship Dreadnought. Now, Dreadnought is one of the most historically important ships in the game and in the world because it was a generational leap in naval capital ship design. Now, why would you even care about this Tier 3 ship in game? Well, there's a couple of reasons why you may actually want to pick one of these up. We'll get to that later when we're talking about the ship in game. You can probably tell what one of those reasons are from the gameplay you're going to be seeing in the background here. It should be pretty obvious. I'll see if you guys can guess it. But anyway, if you wouldn't mind, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment on this video. The algorithm likes to see interaction with the video. I know some of you guys think it's pretty cringe to ask for that, but I'm sorry, that's just the way YouTube is nowadays. I wish it was different. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the Dreadnought, starting off with the real life ship and her history. So, early 20th century naval design was something to behold. We had all sorts of crazy ships and designs, and no one was really doing exactly the same thing as each other. Different countries were trying out different things. The French were building hotels and sending them to war. It was pretty crazy. Then along comes the first Sea Lord of the Royal Navy, one man by the name of Sir John Fisher, and he lays out a general some general categories that he wants the new capital ship of the Royal Navy to meet. He wants a ship that has a uniformed main battery guns that could reach 21 knots, and that was, of course, well armored. So, this led to the design and development of Dreadnought. She's the first ship to have a uniform set of guns. What that means is that the main battery guns primarily consist of guns that are the same caliber. You see, before the Dreadnought, you had these, again, absolutely crazy ships that would sometimes have 3 or 4 different main quote-unquote caliber guns, or a very few number of large caliber guns backed up by a lot of large caliber secondary guns. A good example of this would be the Olympia museum ship over here in the United States. She's a protected cruiser. Again, she has a couple of large guns and then some large secondary guns and then a bunch of smaller secondary guns. The Dreadnought moved away from that and focused more on, again, a large number of uniform large caliber guns. In the Dreadnought's case, 10 12-inch guns. So that's his first category met. The second one, her speed. She was powered by steam turbines, the first capital ship to be powered by that, which meant she could reach the blazing top speed of 21 knots, a number the U.S. Navy would be fine with for several decades. Which, again, think of it in like World Warships terms, that's not that fast, but for 1906, for a giant hunk of metal strapped with 10 12-inch guns, that's quite terrifyingly fast. So yeah, and of course the ship was well armored as well. So, when the Dreadnought was launched and revealed to the world, it had what's called the Dreadnought effect. Everyone saw what the ship was, saw how good it was, and raced to make their own versions of it. That's why in-game, if you look at the description of a lot of lower tier ships, they'll say a Dreadnought, yada yada yada, a pre-Dreadnought, yada yada yada. Well, for like a handful of ships, doesn't even mention pre-Dreadnought, or a super Dreadnought, because this is kind of the marker point for advances in naval technology. Dreadnought-style battleships, or essentially what pretty much every single Tier 3 and 4 battleship is in the game. And then from Tier 5 on up, you get the Super Dreadnoughts with thicker armor, larger guns, so forth and so on. And if you're the U.S. Navy, you hold on to that until you get to the Tier 8. So, what's really funny, too, is that since the Dreadnought was so advanced and everyone rushed to catch up, within a few years, the Dreadnought herself was kind of outclassed. Again, it kicked off a naval arms race, which, of course, led to World War I, but that's another video for another time. And what was really ironic, too, that this super advanced ship that was the envy of the world didn't really do too much in real life. She wasn't at Jutland. She didn't really participate in many major battles in World War I. She did ram U-29 and sunk it, and yeah, that's about it. Unfortunately, after that, she was pretty much relegated to coastal defense for the rest of the war, and then by the time she rejoined the Grand Fleet, it was in 1918, war is over. 1919, she was put into reserve, and unfortunately she was sold for scrap, I believe, around 1921. What is up with the Royal Navy and not saving any of their super important and historically significant ships. You scrap Dreadnought, then you turn around after World War II, and you scrap Warspite, and then you scrap Vanguard. That's... I don't get it. I know, like, after World War II, and I guess, after World War I, too, government's out of money. They gotta make money somewhere, but sheesh. Anyway, so, Dreadnought in game... She was released, I believe, well, it was 4 years ago now, in 2019. I believe she came out in the middle of 2019. What's really cool about Dreadnought in game is that she wasn't sold by herself. She was sold with the Vanguard. So the Dreadnought, you had what is essentially the first modern battleship, and then you had the Vanguard, which was the last battleship ever commissioned. Jean Bart doesn't count. She was stuck in development hell. So you could get both in a bundle. It's a pretty neat bundle, and I did pick it up because I wanted the Vanguard. Vanguard was and still is a pretty decent ship in my mind, although, again, the way the game's gone has been too kind to Vanguard. Now, this is a tier 3 battleship in game, and she is in her, like, I think it's 1907 refit. She doesn't have her almost 30 secondary guns. She has 17 secondary guns, and what was really interesting about the secondary guns is that they were originally designed to be dismantled off of the deck, because if they just left the secondary guns out and about, they would be damaged by the muzzle blast from the 12-inch guns. I believe they scrapped this idea, and that's why most of the secondary guns, if you look at the model, are actually on top of the turrets. Neat little bit of info there. But yeah, given the count of secondary guns, I think she's in like her 1907 refit. Why is that important? We'll get to that in a moment. So this is a tier 3 battleship. How is she? Well, her stats are pretty good. She's pretty well armored. Of course, it's a tier 3 battleship, so it's not going to be, incredibly tough. But for tier 3, she's decently well armored. 16 millimeter upper bow. She has a 152 millimeter wraparound icebreaker bow. Her main armor belt's 279 millimeters, and she has another wraparound 102 millimeter icebreaker stern, if you will. Her citadel is below the waterline, and it is protected by a bit of turtleback that is, again, 279 millimeters thick. So, pretty well protected ship. Again, these tier 3 battleships are quite tough and can take quite the beating for, well, how short the tier 3 games tend to be nowadays. For her HP, she actually has a pretty decent amount of HP. 37,000 HP by tier 3 standards is actually pretty darn good. For comparison, the Verbis Unitas has, I believe, 36,000 HP at tier 5. God, Wargaming did that ship so wrong. Yeah, the Verbis Unitas has 35,700 HP at tier 5. That is, well, that sucks. But we've talked about the Verbis Unitas many a times here on the channel. So since you do have a higher bit of HP there, even though your armor isn't the best by tier 3 standards, that 7,000 plus HP that you have over 30,000 will take you quite a bit of ways. For her artillery, like I said, she does have 10 305mm guns. Those are 12-inch guns for us Americans. She has 17 of her 76mm secondary guns. Again, this is why I believe she is in her 1907-ish era refit. Now, the main battery guns, they reload in 30 seconds. They have a 180 time with Jack Dunkirk with Grease the Gears of 48 seconds, which, the guns on this ship take a hot second to turn if you don't have Grease the Gears, and I do have, again, Jack Dunkirk on there, so that does help with that quite a bit. But even with 48 seconds, you can easily outrun your guns. Alright, so for her AP... Her AP shells do a maximum damage of 8,100 and come out the tubes at 831 meters a second. Her HE does 5,200 maximum damage. She has 32% fire chance per shell, and those come out the tubes at 831 meters a second. And her maximum dispersion is 197 meters with a maximum range of 13.7 kilometers. And honestly, for a tier 3 battleship, these guns are actually pretty accurate. It's not really like on a per turret basis, but she has 10 guns, 5 turrets, and with that you get a good effect of accuracy through volume. And again, for tier 3, the guns are pretty accurate. It's one of the more comfortable tier 3 battleships to play, definitely in my opinion. She does run into some problems here and there, but it's not really with her guns, except for the turret traverse. It does take forever forever to get around, it feels like, again, even with greased gears. What is pretty cool too is that she does have those wing turrets in the front, so when you are having to maneuver, even though your rear set of guns are taking the long way around, you still are probably going to have one turret at least on target. And again, at tier 3 sometimes you only need one last little blast to take out the enemy ship, so she does have that going for her. The firing angles are decent from my experience, nothing insane, nothing terrible, again, when we're talking about a tier 3 battleship here. Secondaries are pretty much useless though. I mean, if you get right in somebody's face and they're pretty low, they might take them out, but it's not worth building into. You can't really build into much with the modules. You only have 2 module slots, and then unless you're like me and just have a bunch of 19-point commanders and 21-point commanders laying around, you probably, again, don't have too many points to invest into the ship anyway. Again, a lot of these tier 3 battleships pretty much play the same anyway. Alright, going on down to maneuverability, 22.1 knots with the speed flag, a turning circle radius of 520 meters, and rudder shift time 11.6 seconds. So again, a pretty maneuverable ship here. You can run circles around a lot of the enemy battleships. A lot of them just seem to be okay with just sitting there and chilling while you run around them. I don't know why, but from my experience, at least, that was what I was doing a lot. And with that extra bit of maneuverability, you do get the advantage in a brawl, which at tier 3 does still happen plenty enough, which, thank God, because that makes tier 3 pretty fun. Concealment 10.7 kilometers. I mean, it's good for tier 3 standards, but, like, everyone's concealment sucks at tier 3, so yeah, you're going to be seen anyway. Alright, for her consumables, again, nothing really fancy here. You get a heal, 224 HP per second, 30-second runtime, 70-second reload time, and 5 charges of that consumable. Damage cons active for 16.5 seconds. That's pretty nice, and reloads in 76 seconds base. Alright, so the Dreadnought. Why might you want to pick this thing up? Well, if you haven't been able to tell from probably at least the 2 replays we've had to watch for the course of this video, tier 3 is absolutely populated by bots right now. They did this a little while ago because most players get out of tier 3 fairly fast. Even brand spanking new players, they might spend 3, 4, 5, maybe if they're having a really bad run, 10 games in tier 3, and then they move on. And since tier 3 is +1, -1 matchmaking, you, of course, can't get double up tier to tier 5, thank God. So, because of that, you are pretty well off. You can only see tier 4 ships, and you can see tier 2 ships. Pretty comfortable matchmaking slot there. And since there's so many bots there, and this is still random battles, but just because there's bots, it doesn't count it as co-op damage or anything like that. It's the same as if you were to blast a full health ship to not if you do it to a bot. So economically there, you have a pretty good incentive. And these bots love to just slap W, go down the middle, and just have at it. And they've improved the bot's AI a bit. But if you, again, are paying attention and get used to fighting against bots, you can. It's pretty obvious when they're going to launch the torpedoes and when they're just going to bull rush you. So you as a human being have the upper hand and can finesse them and easily get some damage or some kills in. It is tier 3, so it's not a ton of money being brought in. But with how fast these matches go, even the longer ones are like maybe 9 minutes long, if that. I had one game out of the 5 I played for this that went over the 12-minute mark. And that was just because we had actual, like, half teams of real people that play a little more carefully than the bots. So you can do some nice bot farming here with the Dreadnought. Now, she is $15, which is fairly cheap for a premium in this game. It's pretty funny because most tier 3s cost like maybe $10, but then this thing's 15 because, well, they know everyone that's a history buff wants to get it, and because, again, it is like the only tier 3 battleship with the guns that can actually hit something that isn't, one of the remove ships like the Nikolai or the Koenig Albert. But anyway, a big flaw with the ship is that she has no AA, and this is what I was talking about with, what refit is she in. Because she did get fitted with some AA very late in her life, like a late World War I. She had originally 2, I believe, 50 millimeter guns, and then they replaced them with, I think, some 8-pounders. So she did have some AA. And it's not a lot, but it would have been something. But it would be, amiss if you get the ship and then you realize it doesn't have any AA. It's not like you can see tier 6 carriers, but you can see tier 4 carriers. And, I mean, it is a little frustrating when you can literally do nothing to them. Like, don't get me wrong. A lot of people like to say, oh, my AA does literally nothing. No, your AA does something, alright? Alright? The Dreadnought literally does nothing because it doesn't have any AA guns. You can't even send Joffrey out on deck with his infield to try and shoot the planes down, alright? So you don't have any AA. And given that she has pretty accurate guns, a lot of HP, and she's pretty maneuverable, that is a painful trade-off, but honestly a pretty fair one for what you get here. Now, in today's World of Warships, another big pickup is that you don't have to deal with submarines, because those don't show up until tier 6. Since you're at tier 3, you don't have to deal with subs, so you can go down to tier 3, hide, beat the crap out of some bots and random battles, earn a bit of credits, and then, release your anger that way. So, yeah, I think there's reason to pick this ship up. It's only $15, and they did just release the coupons for the holidays, and we have these until the 7th. So you can potentially pick this ship up for fairly cheap. I believe you can also get her for doubloons as well in the armory. So yeah, I'd say she's worth picking up if you got the spare cash, again, especially right now. The games you're watching in the background, I only had the gray economic boosters on in my premium time. So with like the blue or even the green economic boosters, you can earn a little bit more. Again, it's not a ton, but through volume, you will make a tiny bit of money because, again, this ship is super easy to become top on the team with, especially with the bots that are just rushing you and with how accurate these ships' guns are. HE's fairly decent too, although it's not British BBHE. So yeah, I'd say this ship, it's like a... If we didn't get the changes to where tier 3 we get popular with bots now, I'd say it's a pretty meh boat. But right now, it's decent. It's nice for farming, if you're into lower tier farming, or if you just want to seal club too. So guys, that's my 2 cents on the Dreadnought. Let me know what you guys think about the ship in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed and have a wonderful Wednesday. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope to catch you guys in the next one.